So let's get down to learning the actual music for Ode to Joy. If you look at this piece, you'll see that it's 16 bars long, which means that it's longer than anything we've looked at before. Also, there are some dynamic markings and some rhythms that we haven't seen before. So if you get confused by any of this stuff, just go ahead and look it up. The first thing I notice when I look at the sheet music for Ode to Joy is that bars 1, 2, and 3, bars 5, 6, and 7, and bars 13, 14, and 15 are all the same. They're exactly the same, which means that you've got 9 out of 16 bars that are identical, which gives you a big head start. So let's jump ahead and tackle the hardest part of this tune, which I think is measure 9 to 12. If you look at measure 9, you'll see that we have the D, the E, and the C that we've worked with before. Those were the first 3 notes we learned. So all we have to do is put them together in the sequence. Remember, we have 4 quarter notes, 2 Ds, 1 E, and 1 C. And it'll sound something like this. Pretty simple, right? Let's do that again. Now, if you look at measure 10, it's almost similar, but we have a couple extra eighth notes in there. Instead of having 2 Ds on the first half of the bar in quarter notes, we have 1 D and then eighth notes going from the E to the F and then back to the E for a quarter note, down to the C for a quarter note. So in measure 10, we have this. Let's hear that one more time. Now you notice that the eighth notes go twice as fast as the quarter notes, just like how quarter notes go twice as fast as half notes. So if you put those 2 measures together, measure 9 and measure 10, you get this. You see how measure 10 is sort of a variation on measure 9? Here's measure 9 again. And here's measure 10. It's very close. Now, look at measure 11. Measure 11 has the same first half as measure 10, but the last 2 notes are slightly different. The last 2 quarter notes, instead of going E to C like it does in measure 10, it goes E to D. So measure 11 sounds like this. Do you hear the difference? Here's measure 10. And here's measure 11. It's really just that last note that's different. So let's put measure 9, 10, and 11 all together in a row. You hear how each one gets just slightly different from the one before? Let's now look at measure 12. Measure 12 is the completion of this phrase. So you have the first bar, a slightly different second bar, a slightly more different third bar, and then one last bar that wraps it all up. So measure 12 goes like this. We use that G, that's the top of our 5-note scale pattern, as the end of that phrase. So let's put all 4 of those bars together. You hear how that all flows together nicely? Now, let's go back to the beginning and take it from the top. At the very beginning of this, we're using all 5 notes of our 5-note scale that we have been warming up with and practicing up until this point. Let's hear how the first 4 bars go. Now, if you look at the 4th bar, you see that you have a dotted quarter note, then an 8th note, and then a half note. That dotted quarter note is equal to 1.5 quarter notes, which means that with the extra 8th note, that's 1 whole half of a bar. So you have 1, 2, and 3, 4. This might be a little bit new, so make sure you look it up and practice it. When you add it to the rest of the first 3 bars, which are just quarter notes, it creates a really nice musical phrase, and it's mirrored later on in the 8th bar. So in measure 4, we have E, D, D, and in measure 8, we have D, C, C. It's almost the same thing, just down a note. And remember, like we talked about earlier, measure 1 to 3 and measure 5 to 7 are exactly the same. So the first 8 bars sounds like this. You hear how it's basically the same with one little difference? Now, let's look at bars 12 to 16. I'm sorry, 13 to 16. 13 to 15 are exactly the same as 1 to 3, and 16 is exactly the same as bar 8. So, it's the same second phrase. It's actually the same as bars 5 to 8. So, when we add that to measures 9 to 12, it sounds like this. You hear that? Now, one of the things you've got to remember in learning this kind of music is it's very emotional music. It's very joyous music, and it needs to be played with a lot of expression. So let's play it from 1 to 16 and really put our whole heart and soul in it. Check it out. You hear how I combined all of the elements that we've been talking about. Good tone, good rhythm, the scales that we've been working on, but also dynamics and articulation in order to make the music really sing. That's what I want you to learn as you practice Ode to Joy. Now it's up to you.